I had survived 347 planetary rotations as the head archivist of the Galactic Council's Xenobiology Division, and in all those years, I had never once questioned my life choices. That is, until the day I met Marcus Webb and his absolutely deranged companion. My name is Kelvar Thornspine, and I am a Vexillian. We are, objectively speaking, one of the most logical species in the known universe. Our 4 eyes see in spectrums you cannot imagine. Our computational brains process data faster than your primitive quantum computers. We do not panic. We do not scream. We certainly do not, under any circumstances, climb onto our desks while shrieking like a freshly hatched grub. And yet, there I was. But let me back up, because you need context to understand exactly how a species that prides itself on cold, calculated reasoning ended up in such an undignified position. The Predator King, as he styled himself, was named Drakmar Vosh. He was a Kronthian warlord, which meant he stood roughly 9 feet tall, possessed 4 arms that could crush steel, and had a jaw that could bite through reinforced titanium. His species had evolved on a death world where everything, and I mean everything, wanted to kill you. They were apex predators who had clawed their way to the top of their food chain through sheer, brutal violence. Drakmar had arrived at the council station 3 cycles ago with a simple message. He was challenging any species who dared to face him in ritual combat. The prize? Mining rights to the Kelthara system, which contained enough rare minerals to fund a small empire. The catch? You had to actually survive the encounter. So far, 12 species had tried. 12 species had failed. The Brutaxians, who could lift hover tanks. The Silthrine, who possessed venom that could melt through blast doors. Even the Korvax, those 6-legged nightmare creatures from the sulfur swamps of Hexus Prime, had lasted approximately 45 seconds before Drakmar literally pulled them apart. The Predator King sat in the center of the council's grand arena, looking bored. His black scales glittered under the artificial lights, and his yellow eyes scanned the assembled delegates with obvious disdain. Is this truly the best your pathetic council can offer? He rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. Where is the fear? Where is the challenge? I was told the galaxy was filled with warriors, but all I see are soft, weak creatures playing at civilization. Ambassador Relthic, a dignified Fraxian with crystalline skin. Wait. No. With translucent skin that shifted colors when agitated. Cleared his throat. Perhaps, Lord Vosh, you might consider that violence is not the measure of a species' worth. Drakmar laughed. It sounded like an avalanche. Violence is the only measure that matters. Your council exists because species like mine allow it to exist. You hide behind words and treaties because you lack the strength to take what you want. I was taking notes, as usual. My job involved documenting first contact scenarios, unusual species interactions, and basically anything that might prove academically interesting. This situation was definitely going in my files under monumentally stupid displays of testosterone, cross-species edition. That was when the doors to the arena hissed open. The human walked in like he owned the place. Not strutted, not marched, just walked, with this casual confidence that immediately set my danger sensors tingling. He wore simple clothing, what I later learned humans called jeans and a t-shirt, and carried a small transport cage in one hand. Hey there, he said, his voice cheerful and completely inappropriate for the situation. I heard you were looking for a challenge. Name's Marcus Webb, by the way. I'm from Earth. The arena went silent. Earth. I quickly accessed my databanks. Earth, Terra, Sol 3. Death World Classification. Surprisingly high gravity. Atmospheric oxygen levels that would be considered toxic to most species, teeming with predators and parasites and diseases that would make a Korvax weep. And humans, who had only joined the galactic community 6 standard years ago and had already managed to confuse, terrify, and utterly baffle every species they encountered. Drakmar leaned forward, interested despite himself. A human? I have heard stories about your kind. They say you are persistence hunters, that you chase your prey until it dies of exhaustion. Marcus shrugged. I mean, yeah, some of us used to do that. Nowadays we mostly just order food on our phones. But I brought a friend who might interest you more. He set down the cage and opened it. What emerged should not exist. No, Seriously. I checked the biological databases 3 times, and each time I became more convinced that evolution had made a terrible mistake. The creature was small, maybe 2 feet long, with gray and white fur that looked deceptively soft. It had tiny ears, a pointed snout, and little black eyes that held absolutely no light of intelligence or mercy. It waddled out of the cage with this rolling gait that seemed almost comical. "This," Marcus announced proudly, "is Gerald. He's a honey badger." Drakmar stared. I stared. Everyone in the arena stared. Ambassador Relthic leaned toward me. "Kelvar, what is a honey badger?" I pulled up the data, reading quickly. According to Earth databases, the honey badger, or Mellivora capensis, is a small carnivorous mammal native to Africa, Southwest Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. It is known for its thick skin, aggressive nature, and apparent lack of self-preservation instincts. There are multiple documented cases of honey badgers attacking animals many times their size, including lions, leopards, and, I paused, rechecking the data, and Cape buffalo. They also have a reputation for raiding beehives despite being stung thousands of times, hence the name. "So it is a scavenger," Drakmar said dismissively. "A tiny pest." "Actually," Marcus said, still smiling, "Gerald here is what we call an ambassador for his species. See, the thing about honey badgers is that they just don't care about anything. Size doesn't matter. Strength doesn't matter. Consequences definitely don't matter. They've got this attitude that basically says, I'm going to do whatever I want, and you can't stop me." Gerald, as if to demonstrate this point, immediately wandered over to the nearest support pillar and began urinating on it. Several delegates gasped. One fainted. Drakmar rose to his full height, his scales bristling. "You dare insult me with this? All this creature? I am the Predator King. I have killed champions of 100 worlds." Yeah, Marcus said, waving a hand dismissively. "Very impressive. Gerald, buddy, you want to say hello to the nice scary alien?" Gerald looked up from his business, spotted Drakmar, and made a sound that I can only describe as a cross between a growl and a demonic wheeze. Then, and this is where things got truly insane, this tiny mammal charged directly at a 9-foot-tall apex predator who could bench press a hovercar. Drakmar laughed. "This is your champion?" This pathetic little Gerald hit him like a furry missile. "Now, I need to explain something about honey badgers. Their skin is extraordinarily thick and loose, which means when a predator bites them, they can twist around inside their own skin and counterattack. They also have claws designed for digging through hard soil, which means they can absolutely shred flesh when motivated. And Gerald was very motivated. He scurried up Drakmar's leg faster than I could track, dodging the warlord's attempts to swat him away, and went straight for the face. Specifically, the eyes. Honey badgers, I learned in that moment, have an instinctive understanding of weak points. Drakmar roared, stumbling backward, 4 arms flailing as he tried to remove the ball of fury that had attached itself to his head. Gerald hung on, clawing and biting, making sounds that should not come from something so small. It sounded like rage. Pure, distilled, unfiltered rage given physical form. "Get it off," Drakmar bellowed, his voice rising to a pitch I didn't know Kronthians could produce. "Get this demon off my face." Marcus just stood there, hands in his pockets, watching with mild interest. "Gerald, play nice," he called out, but there was no real conviction in his voice. The Predator King, the unstoppable warlord who had defeated 12 species, was now running in circles around the arena, screaming, while a creature that weighed maybe 30 pounds maximum hung off his face like a particularly aggressive scarf. "Make it stop!" Drakmar crashed into a wall, trying to scrape Gerald off. Gerald did not stop. "Please, I yield. Gerald, down boy," Marcus said. And here's the truly terrifying part. Gerald listened. He dropped off Drakmar's face, landed on all fours, and waddled back to Marcus like nothing had happened. Drakmar collapsed to his knees, all 4 hands covering his face. One of his eyes was swelling shut. Blood dripped from numerous scratches. His scales, which had seemed so impenetrable, were torn in several places. "What?" he gasped. "What is that thing?" Marcus picked up Gerald, who immediately went limp in his arms like a normal, harmless pet. This is just a regular honey badger. We've got millions of them on Earth. Had them for millions of years, actually. They're not even the scariest things on our planet. Not by a long shot. I saw Drakmar's remaining functional eye widen with something I had never seen in a Crunthian before. Fear. Pure, existential fear. You live on a world, Drakmar said slowly, where creatures like this are common? Well, yeah, Marcus said, scratching Gerald behind the ears. I mean, we've also got lions, tigers, bears, crocodiles, sharks, box jellyfish, poison dart frogs, bullet ants, Brazilian wandering spiders, saltwater crocodiles, hippopotamuses, which are actually way more dangerous than you'd think, mosquitoes that carry like 15 different diseases, and my personal favorite, the Australian funnel web spider. Oh, and drop bears, but we don't talk about those. Ambassador Relthic had turned a shade of blue I had never seen on a Fraxian. Kelvar, he whispered to me. Are humans insane? I'm beginning to think so, I whispered back. Marcus wasn't done. See, the thing about Earth is that it's really, really dangerous. We've got predators in the oceans, predators in the forests, predators in the deserts, and predators in the cities. We've got bacteria that can kill you, viruses that can kill you, plants that can kill you, and weather that can kill you. So, we, as a species, had to get creative. He held up Gerald, who yawned, showing an impressive set of teeth. We didn't get strong, we didn't get armor. We got stubborn, we got clever, and we learned to work with the other stubborn, clever creatures on our planet, like Gerald here. Drakmar was trembling. I withdraw my challenge, he said quietly. The mining rights. Take them. Just keep that monster away from me. Gerald's not a monster, Marcus said, sounding almost offended. He's just a honey badger. They're actually pretty chill if you respect them. The trick is understanding that they don't fear anything because they've survived everything their environment threw at them for millions of years. Kind of like humans, actually. He set Gerald down again, and the honey badger immediately started investigating the arena, sniffing at things with casual indifference to the fact that he had just terrorized a galactic warlord. Marcus looked around at all of us. So, do I need to sign some paperwork for those mining rights or what? That was when I made my mistake. I stood up from my observation post and called down to the arena floor. Mr. Webb, I am head archivist Kelvar Thornspine. I need to document this encounter for the xenobiology records. Would you mind answering some questions? Marcus looked up and grinned. Sure thing, come on down. I should have stayed where I was. I really should have. But scientific curiosity overrode my common sense, which, let me tell you, is apparently a universal constant among researchers of any species. I descended to the arena floor, my hover pad floating beside me to record notes. Gerald was now investigating a fallen piece of Drakmar's armor, batting at it with his paws. So, I said, activating my recording devices, is Gerald trained? How do you control him? Marcus laughed. Control Gerald? That's a good one. No, you don't really control a honey badger. You just kind of point them in a direction and hope for the best. But Gerald and I have an understanding. I feed him, I don't bother him, and he mostly doesn't try to destroy my apartment. Mostly? I asked, concerned. Yeah, there was that one incident with my couch, but we don't talk about that. Gerald had lost interest in the armor, and was now looking around the arena. His eyes, those tiny black eyes, landed on me. Mr. Webb, I said carefully. Why is your companion staring at me? Oh, he probably thinks you're interesting. New species and all. Gerald, this is Kelvar. Kelvar's a friend. Gerald tilted his head, considering this information. Then he started walking toward me. Not quickly, just a casual, rolling walk that somehow felt more menacing than if he had charged. Mr. Webb, I said, my voice rising slightly. Please call your companion off. He's just curious. Gerald's harmless. Mostly. Gerald was 10 feet away, then 5 feet, then 3 feet. Mr. Webb, I must insist. Gerald stopped right at my feet and looked up at me. Then, without warning, he stood on his hind legs and placed his front paws on my lower appendage, like he was trying to climb me. That was when I screamed. I am not proud of this moment. I am a trained xenobiologist. I have studied the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. I once spent 6 cycles observing the breeding habits of thoraxian acid spitters without flinching. But something about this small, fuzzy earth mammal looking at me with those soulless eyes broke something fundamental in my brain. I activated my hover pad to maximum height and rode it straight up into the air, leaving Gerald on the ground looking confused. "Kelvar, buddy, you okay up there?" Marcus called. "That creature tried to attack me," I shouted down. "He was just trying to say hello. Honey badgers are actually very social with creatures they don't want to eat." "That is not reassuring." Ambassador Relthick had approached cautiously, keeping a safe distance from Gerald. "Mr. Webb, I believe we should conclude today's proceedings. The Council will process your claim to the mining rights and contact you with the appropriate documentation." "Cool," Marcus said. He pulled out a small treat from his pocket and tossed it to Gerald, who caught it mid-air and began munching happily. "Come on, buddy. Let's head home." He scooped up the honey badger, placed him back in the transport cage, and gave the arena a friendly wave. "Nice meeting you all. If you ever need someone to deal with aggressive aliens, you know who to call." As the doors closed behind him, the arena remained silent for a long moment. Then Drakmar spoke, his voice hollow. "I have faced death 1,000 times. I have conquered worlds. I have made entire species kneel before me. But that creature, it had no fear. None. It looked at me and saw nothing worth fearing." "Yes," I said, still hovering near the ceiling. "That appears to be accurate. The human said they were common on his world." "Yes, and that other creatures on his world were more dangerous. That is what he indicated." "Yes." Drakmar stood slowly, testing his limbs. "Then Earth is not a world to be trifled with. Any species that can survive alongside such monsters, that can befriend them, is not a species to challenge." Ambassador Relthick nodded solemnly. "I believe we have learned an important lesson today. Humans do not measure danger the way we do. What they consider a normal household companion is what we would consider a biological weapon." "I'm still not coming down," I announced. "Not until someone confirms that the human and his demon creature have left the station." "Kelvar, you're a xenobiologist," Relthick said. "Surely you can appreciate the fascinating nature of this encounter." "Oh, I appreciate it," I replied. "I appreciate it so much that I'm going to recommend Earth be classified as a restricted death world, and that all humans be required to declare any animal companions before boarding council stations. And I'm going to recommend this from way up here, where honey badgers cannot reach me." 3 station security officers entered to escort Drakmar to the medical bay. The former Predator King went quietly, which was somehow more unsettling than if he had protested. I remained on my hover pad for another full cycle before I felt safe enough to descend. The report I filed that day became one of the most accessed documents in the Galactic Council's archives. Not because it was particularly well written or scientifically rigorous, but because buried in the official language and observational data was a simple truth that every species needed to understand. Humans were not apex predators. They were something far more concerning. They were survivors who had learned to live alongside apex predators, who had befriended them, domesticated them, or simply learned to coexist with them. They came from a world so dangerous that they considered a honey badger a manageable pet. And if a honey badger could terrorize the Predator King, what could a fully armed, determined human do? I decided I didn't want to find out. At least, that's what I thought. But the universe has a sense of humor, and 3 cycles later, I would discover exactly what a determined human could do. That story, however, will have to wait for another time. Because first, I needed to update approximately 6,000 safety protocols, file an official complaint about inadequate species classification systems, and possibly consider a career change. Being head archivist suddenly seemed a lot more dangerous than I had initially thought. 3 cycles after the Gerald incident, as it became known throughout the station, I had almost convinced myself that life could return to normal. Almost. The Council had implemented new protocols. All Earth fauna now required advanced declaration and containment verification. Marcus Webb had been awarded the mining rights, signed a treaty of mutual respect with 6 previously hostile species who suddenly decided diplomacy was preferable to facing Earth creatures, and departed peacefully. I should have known peace wouldn't last. The emergency klaxon woke me from my rest cycle at what humans would call 3 in the morning. My communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Station Commander Vrex, a Tellurian whose species had survived the vacuum of space for short periods and generally didn't panic about anything. He was panicking. Kelvar, get to docking bay 7 immediately. We have a situation. I dragged myself from my sleeping pod, my 4 eyes still adjusting to consciousness. Commander, what kind of situation requires a xenobiologist at this hour? The kind involving humans. My blood went cold. Well, colder than usual. Vexillians are naturally cold-blooded. Please tell me Marcus Webb didn't bring another honey badger. Worse. I couldn't imagine worse. I was wrong. When I arrived at docking bay 7, I found Commander Vrex standing behind a hastily erected barrier along with 12 security officers, all pointing plasma rifles at a single human woman sitting cross-legged on the floor, looking remarkably calm for someone being treated as a threat. She appeared young by human standards, with dark skin, close-cropped hair, and wearing what I recognized as Earth military attire. Beside her sat the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. And remember, I had met Gerald. It was a dog. Specifically, according to my rapidly updating database, a Belgian Malinois. It sat perfectly still, ears perked forward, eyes locked on the security team with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Stand down, the woman said in a calm, clear voice. Nobody needs to get hurt here. You brought an unauthorized predator onto this station. Vrex shouted, his voice modulator crackling with stress. That creature is a clear violation of the new Earth fauna protocols. Sergeant Maya Torres, Earth Defense Coalition, the woman replied, still not moving. And this is Lieutenant Barkley. He's a military working dog, fully trained, and absolutely under my control. We were responding to your distress signal. I blinked. All 4 eyes. What distress signal? What? Vrex turned to me, looking confused. We didn't send a distress signal. You did, Torres said. She pulled out a datapad with her free hand, moving slowly so as not to alarm anyone. Approximately 6 hours ago, this station transmitted an automated emergency beacon, indicating a hostile takeover by Scaran raiders. We were the nearest Earth vessel, so we responded. The Scaran. My blood somehow managed to get even colder. The Scaran were notorious pirates who specialized in taking over stations, stealing everything valuable, and selling the inhabitants into slavery. They were also very, very good at jamming communications and making it look like stations were operating normally. Oh no, I whispered. Oh yes, Torres replied, finally looking at me. Your station's been compromised. Has been for probably 5 hours now. They're good at keeping up appearances while they loot the valuable sections. The emergency beacon was probably triggered by someone before they got caught. Commander Vrex lowered his weapon slowly. If what you're saying is true, then we're already in danger. Yep. Torres stood up in one fluid motion. Lieutenant Barkley stood with her, still perfectly calm, still perfectly focused. Which is why I'm here. Barkley and I specialize in hostile environment rescue operations. We've cleared 17 stations in the past year alone. With just a dog? I asked, incredulous. Torres smiled. It was not a comforting smile. Barkley's not just a dog archivist. He's a tactical assault specialist with 4 years of combat experience, 3 commendations for bravery, and a bite force of approximately 235 pounds per square inch. He can track targets through ventilation systems, identify explosives, and take down threats twice his size. He's also been trained specifically for low gravity and mixed atmosphere environments. Lieutenant Barkley's tail wagged once. Just once. Somehow that single wag was more intimidating than Gerald's entire rampage. You're telling me, Commander Vrex said slowly, that Earth sent a human and a dog to rescue an entire space station from Scaran pirates? Well, when you put it that way, it does sound a bit understated. Torres checked her wrist device. I've got 2 more team members securing the docking bay perimeter, but Barkley and I are going after the raiders. How many hostages are we talking? 347 beings, I said automatically, my archivist training kicking in. Representing 23 species. Most are civilians. We have minimal security personnel. Perfect. Barkley loves civilians. Doesn't love pirates. She scratched behind the dog's ears affectionately. You ready, buddy? The dog made a sound. Not a bark, a low, rumbling growl that somehow conveyed eagerness, confidence, and barely restrained violence all at once. Wait, I said, stepping forward despite every survival instinct screaming at me to run. I'm coming with you. Everyone stared at me. Torres raised an eyebrow. Archivist, no offense, but you look like you'd blow away in a strong breeze. This is going to get violent. I'm the head archivist. I know every corridor, every access tunnel, every hidden passage in this station. You'll get lost without me. I adjusted my recording equipment. Besides, someone needs to document this for the official record. Torres studied me for a moment, then shrugged. Your funeral. Try not to scream. It upsets Barkley's concentration. The small earth creature made me climb onto my desk. I said defensively. I think I can handle myself now. Sure you can. Torres pulled out a compact weapon I didn't recognize. Vrex, lock down this section. Don't let anyone in or out until you hear from me. If we're not back in 2 hours, assume the worst and trigger the station's self-destruct. We don't have a self-destruct, Vrex said. Then improvise. Humans are great at improvising. She gestured to the corridor. Kelvar, lead the way. Barkley, heel. The dog moved to her left side, matching her pace exactly. I led them into the station's main corridor, my hover pad floating beside me, already recording. So, Torres said conversationally as we moved through the empty hallways, I heard about the honey badger incident. Marcus is my cousin. He thought it was hilarious. Your cousin nearly caused a diplomatic incident, I muttered. Yeah, that sounds like Marcus. He's always had a weird sense of humor. Though bringing Gerald was actually pretty smart. Honey badgers are perfect for psychological warfare. They're small enough to seem harmless, but crazy enough to make even the toughest fighters reconsider their life choices. And your dog is different? Torres glanced down at Lieutenant Barkley, who was scanning the corridor with professional efficiency. Barkley's not crazy, he's calculated. Honey badgers don't care about consequences. Military working dogs understand consequences perfectly. They just choose to act anyway because they trust their handlers and believe in their mission. We reached an intersection. I checked my mental map of the station. The control center is 3 levels up. If the Scaran are running this operation, that's where their commander will be. Good. We'll hit them where it hurts. Torres paused, then held up a fist. Barkley froze immediately. Movement. Ahead. 2 contacts. I hadn't seen or heard anything. How can you possibly know? Because Barkley knows. She pointed at the dog, whose ears had swiveled forward, his body tense. Dogs can hear frequencies we can't, feel vibrations we miss, smell things from hundreds of feet away. When Barkley goes on alert, I listen. 2 Scaran raiders rounded the corner, their chitinous armor gleaming in the corridor lights. They were carrying plasma rifles and laughing about something. Probably their successful raid. They stopped laughing when they saw us. Human, one of them hissed, raising his weapon. And a Vexillian. The commander will pay extra for live captures. Barkley, Torres said calmly, search and detain. What happened next occurred so fast that my recording equipment barely captured it. The dog exploded forward like a missile, covering the distance in seconds. The first Scaran tried to shoot, but Barkley was already airborne. Jaws clamping onto the raider's arm with a sickening crunch, the weapon clattered to the floor. The second Scaran swung his rifle toward the dog, but Torres was faster. She fired her weapon, some kind of projectile that hit the raider's rifle and sent it spinning away. Then Barkley released the first raider, who was screaming and clutching his mangled arm, and launched himself at the second. In less than 10 seconds, both raiders were on the ground, disarmed, injured, and completely neutralized. Barkley stood over them, lips pulled back in a snarl that showed every one of his very impressive teeth. Torres walked up casually, zip-tied both raiders' appendages together, and patted Barkley's head. Good boy. Who's a good tactical operator? You are. Yes, you are. The dog's tail wagged enthusiastically, all traces of aggression vanishing as he leaned into her affection. Then his ears perked up again, and he was instantly back to alert mode. That, I said faintly, was terrifying. That was Tuesday, Torres replied. Come on. We've got a station to save. We continued through the corridors, encountering 3 more groups of raiders. Each time, the pattern repeated. Barkley would alert, Torres would assess, and then the 2 of them would move with this perfect synchronization that spoke of years of training and absolute trust. The dog was relentless, fearless, and devastatingly effective. But what struck me most was how much the raiders feared him. These were Scaran pirates, beings who made their living through violence and intimidation. Yet when they saw the dog, something primal kicked in. They recognized a predator, a hunter, something that had been perfected through thousands of generations to chase down prey and never, ever give up. We reached the control center. Torres placed a small device on the door, and it sparked briefly before sliding open. Inside, we found 5 raiders and approximately 30 hostages, including Ambassador Relthic and several other council members. The raider commander, a massive Scaran with battle scars covering his armor, spun toward us. "Foolish human, you are outnumbered. Surrender, or I will execute the hostages." Torres looked at him. Just looked. Then she said, very quietly, "Barkley, protect." The dog's demeanor changed. Gone was the tactical operator. In his place was something older, something that had been bred into canines long before they went to space. He moved in front of Torres, lowered his head, and growled. It started low in his chest and built to a sound that made every being in the room freeze. "You know what that sound is?" Torres asked conversationally. "That's the sound wolves made when they protected their pack. 40,000 years ago, my ancestors heard that sound and decided to make friends with it instead of enemies. We turned wolves into dogs, and they turned us into better hunters, better survivors. We conquered Earth together." She took a step forward. Barkley matched her. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to release the hostages, you're going to surrender your weapons, and you're going to hope that I don't give Barkley the command to stop protecting and start hunting." The raider commander laughed, but it sounded forced. "One dog? You think one dog frightens me?" "No," Torres said. "I think one dog should terrify you. Because if humans could turn wolves into loyal companions, imagine what else we've learned to work with. Imagine what else is waiting on Earth." She was bluffing, probably, but her confidence was absolute. And Barkley's growl continued, promising violence if needed. The standoff lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then the raider commander's nerve broke. He dropped his weapon. "Take them. Take the hostages. Just keep that creature away from me." The other raiders followed suit, surrendering without a fight. Torres had Barkley guard them while she freed the hostages, who scrambled away from both the dog and the pirates with equal enthusiasm. Ambassador Relthic approached me shakily. "Kelvar, is that another Earth animal?" "Yes," I said. "A domesticated one, apparently." "Domesticated?" Relthic's colors shifted through the entire spectrum. "That thing is more frightening than Gerald." "Actually," Torres said, overhearing, "Gerald would probably try to fight Barkley. It wouldn't go well for Gerald, but he'd absolutely try. That's the difference between honey badgers and military working dogs. Honey badgers are chaos. Dogs are controlled fury." Station security arrived moments later, having finally realized something was wrong. They took the raiders into custody while Torres gave Barkley what she called a decompression treat, some kind of earth food that the dog devoured, happily. Commander Vrex approached us, his voice modulator clicking with emotion. "Sergeant Torres, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank you for your service. You saved 347 lives today." "Just doing my job, Commander," she scratched Barkley behind the ears. "Besides, Barkley did most of the work. I just pointed him in the right direction." "I need to update our files," I said, my hoverpad already compiling data. "Earth animals continue to be far more capable than our initial assessments indicated." Torres smiled. "Archivist, you haven't even scratched the surface. Dogs are just the beginning. We've got horses that can carry soldiers into battle, dolphins that help our navy, falcons that hunt drones, rats that detect landmines, bees that identify explosives. And those are just the ones we've trained. Earth has millions of species, and humans have learned to understand, respect, or at least coexist with most of them. Why?" I asked. "Why work with these creatures instead of simply dominating them?" Torres considered the question seriously. Because we learned a long time ago that partnership is stronger than domination. When you dominate something, you have to constantly enforce that domination. But when you partner with something, when you earn its trust and give it yours, you create something more powerful than either of you could be alone. She looked down at Barkley, who gazed up at her with absolute devotion. Barkley trusts me to keep him safe. I trust him to keep me alive. That bond? That's what makes us dangerous. Ambassador Relthick nodded slowly. I am beginning to understand humans better. You do not see yourselves as apex predators or prey. You see yourselves as part of a larger ecosystem. Exactly, Torres said. And that ecosystem includes honey badgers, military working dogs, and about 8 billion humans who are all just trying to figure out how to survive in a galaxy that keeps underestimating us. The council held an emergency session 3 hours later. I presented my findings, supplemented by the recording of Barkley's tactical operations. The conclusion was unanimous. Earth was to be reclassified, not as a death world, though it certainly qualified, not as a restricted zone, though that had been considered. Instead, Earth received a new classification, one created specifically for humanity and its unique relationship with its planet's fauna. Partnership world. Approach with caution, respect, and an understanding that humans do not travel alone. As the session concluded, Torres and Barkley prepared to return to their ship. I accompanied them to the docking bay, my hover pad recording one final interview. Sergeant Torres, one last question for the archives. What would you say to species who are afraid of Earth and its creatures? She thought for a moment, then smiled. I'd say fear is healthy. Earth is dangerous. Our animals are dangerous. We're dangerous. But fear doesn't have to mean hostility. It can mean respect. And respect? That's something humans understand. Barkley barked once, as if agreeing. Oh? And archivist? Torres added, as she boarded her ship. If you ever visit Earth, look me up. I'll introduce you to my other dog. He's a Siberian Husky, completely different personality. You'll love him. Absolutely not, I said firmly. I have met enough Earth canines for one lifetime. Her laughter echoed through the docking bay as the ship departed. I returned to my quarters, exhausted but satisfied. My report was complete. The station was safe. The galaxy had learned another valuable lesson about humanity. And I had learned something too. Humans weren't dangerous because they were strong or aggressive. They were dangerous because they understood something fundamental that most species had forgotten or never learned. Survival wasn't about being the biggest or the strongest or the most fearless. It was about adaptation, partnership, and the willingness to face impossible odds with whatever allies you could find. Even if those allies happened to be a honey badger or a dog. I filed my final report, updated the xenobiology databases, and finally allowed myself to rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new first contacts, new opportunities to document the strange and wonderful diversity of galactic life. But tonight, I was content knowing that the universe had become just a little bit more interesting, a little bit more complex, and a whole lot more careful around humans and their companions. Because if there was one thing the galaxy had learned in the past few cycles, it was this: never underestimate a human. And definitely, absolutely, never underestimate whatever creature they brought with them. Fear might have been extinct in the Predator King's worldview, but humans had reintroduced it, not through strength or violence, but through the simple, terrifying demonstration that on Earth, even the smallest creature could be an apex predator if it was stubborn enough, clever enough, and willing to fight for what it believed in. And humans had spent 40,000 years learning from those creatures, partnering with them, and becoming something far more formidable than any single species could be alone. The Predator King had claimed fear was extinct. Then Marcus Webb walked in with a honey badger, and Sergeant Maya Torres walked in with a military working dog, and the entire galaxy collectively remembered what fear felt like. I drifted off to sleep, my dreams filled with images of Earth, a beautiful, terrifying death world teeming with creatures that refused to give up, refused to back down, and refused to accept that anything was impossible. And somewhere on that blue and green planet, billions of humans lived alongside those creatures, learning from them, adapting with them, and preparing for whatever challenges the galaxy might throw their way. The Predator King had been wrong. Fear wasn't extinct. It had just been waiting for the right species to remind everyone what true fearlessness looked like. And that species, improbably, impossibly, was humanity. With their honey badgers, their dogs, and their unshakable belief that partnership was stronger than domination, humans had walked into the galaxy and changed everything. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own 4 eyes, but I had. And now, the galaxy would never be the same.